Hey everyone, it's Ivan, kitpatcher.com, out here for another gear review, and today, talking jackets, this guy right here, which is the G-Loft TLG jacket by Carinthia. Real quick, a little bit of backstory on this jacket right here. When I was over at Finish Brutality this last summer, probably like, I don't know, about 5 or so months ago now, I actually met some of the guys from Carinthia. They were there, and really cool guys, got to talking about gear, things like that. And they're like, hey, I think, what size do you wear? And I'm like, probably like medium-ish. And they're like, hang on. And so they ended up pulling this thing out, and they're like, see if this will fit you. And I'm like, yeah, it does. And they're like, cool, let us know how it does. And I'm like, all right, sweet. And so since then, past, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, whatever it is, I've actually put in a lot of time with this jacket. And yeah, it's done a pretty good job. If you're unfamiliar with Carinthia, they are a European manufacturer. Consequently, you don't see them a ton in the States. They make all kinds of stuff to include all kinds of different layering and yeah, largely kind of military-oriented clothing. And yeah, this jacket's pretty cool on a couple fronts. One, materials-wise, uses a couple different insulations. They're G-Loft, they're CI, and I believe STI. One is a compact insulation, the other is a stable insulation. Don't really know what those mean, other than I'm sure they're just kind of two different insulation weights, densities, something along those lines. But what they've done really cool with this is they basically mapped it. So places where you need more insulation, i.e. your core, there is more insulation, and then you end up with less insulation and then the least amount of insulation. And so yeah, it's basically mapped on like retaining heat where you need to retain heat, and then getting rid of heat where you can get rid of it. So basically this whole panel is breathable and also stretch, and so think basically an active insulation piece. While you absolutely can, and I do just wear this thing around town or around my house for that matter, it is a piece that you can essentially layer like it's a technical piece. So depending on how warm or cold it is, you can just throw this thing on and be like, oh, cool, I'm comfortable, more so than just being in a t-shirt. Granted, if the temp drops like too low, and a lot of this is just personal preference, then it's like, okay, well this is not as warm as I would like it to be, because yeah, like it's not a big like puff insulation piece. But the way they basically mapped it is, yeah, keeping that heat where it needs to be around your core, and then less insulation on out. So you end up with a really lightweight garment that moves really well and also breathes really well. And so when you get into places where a lot of people, it's like, okay, cool, we're gonna go kick off this hike like early in the morning. You're like, all right, cool. Well, you're waiting around for the hike, and so you want to be warm, so you have all these insulation pieces on. And then as soon as you start hiking, you immediately sweat and wet everything out. Not a good thing. And so it's one of those where, hey, where do I balance enough insulation to keep myself warm so I'm not going to end up like hyping out, but at the same time not so much that I'm just going to like immediately overheat as soon as I start moving. And this does a really good job of basically striking that balance. As far as some other features on the jacket that I actually really appreciate is, while the cuff is cut there, I will say the sleeves, they did a good job as far as the sleeves being long enough with respect to the chest size. So lots of times you'd be like, cool, like medium-ish, around like 40-inch chest, something like that. And they'll be like, okay, well then you probably need sleeves that'll come to here. And I'm like, no, I would like longer sleeves. And so sizing wise, I actually really appreciate how it's sized. And yeah, your cuff here, and then on this side, the face of this and the insulation actually comes down a little bit further, which actually is really nice in use. The face of the material, pretty durable. It's almost kind of like a ripstop. One thing that is kind of weird, well, weird for me because I'm from America, is the zippers are backwards. So I guess in America, unbeknownst to me, found this out. Apparently women's zippers are like this on women's clothing, but on men's clothing, yeah, the zipper pull is on the other side, and whatever, it's opposite over in Europe. So the other nice thing inside this jacket is your hand pockets right here. While it's basically some insulation there, you can basically use them to mechanically vent by unzipping them, again, depending on how much output. And of course, you can obviously unzip the entire thing if you have a pushing hard. And then there's a Napoleon pocket over on the left breast. Rarely use these for anything, but they are handy if you are going to put like small electronics, think your phone or something like that. It'll keep it warmer than just in the hand pockets. This is one of those pieces where I get it there on the hood. I guess I should put this thing back on. There's a bill, which can be handy, and there's also a draw cord, so you can essentially cinch the hood up, make it form-fitting, which makes it to where this little bill actually is useful. It works. Back here you can cinch this thing up. I'm not a huge fan of draw cords on hoods outside of like a hard shell. Me personally, just because that's where I actually use them. Don't usually use them on like anything soft, but it has it, so it is a feature. Something else I will say that is really nice about this is it's incredibly lightweight and pretty compressible, like does not take up a ton of space. So with that, it's actually kind of been a go-to for some traveling I've done. Basically, it makes it onto my carry-on or into my carry-on. I'll just compress it down, shove it in my backpack if I don't need it. And then if I do need it, again, light insulation layer, pull that thing out, throw it on, good to go. So where does this fit in? Well, as I mentioned, it's a technical piece. It is made for like active insulation, and you can use it just around the town, around the house, which I do also. It being as thin as it is and as light as it is, it's actually really easy to layer in that if you have like a heavy insulation piece, I'll have this on and I'll just throw that over this. And like if I'm going out, something like that, or for that matter, if I'm actually out and like some sort of exertion, whether it's backpacking, hiking, or even like cross-country skiing, can have this on. Really easy to like regulate, maintain temperature. As soon as you stop, pull that puff insulation piece out, throw it on over this, and you're good to go. So yeah, pretty solid. If I had to compare it to something, kind of like an Atom LT, which a lot of people usually have had some experience with. I will say this is probably kind of more comfortable, more breathable, and again, that mapped insulation versus the Atom LT, where I think it's pretty much same insulation throughout. So I would definitely give this the edge to a technical piece, whereas the Atom LT was probably a little bit warmer if you're just sitting there static, because again, not mapped insulation. If this is something you're interested in, you can get them obviously directly through Carinthia. Places stateside, kind of hard to find. Occasionally you can find some stuff. Price-wise, they're looking at around 250 bucks. And you're like, man, I want it cheap, but I also want it not made in China. Well, you get to pick one. These made over in Europe, and yeah, been really pleased with just how it's done for me, just performance-wise, as well as how it's held up. But yeah, solid jacket overall. There'll be links down below if you would like to check it out. And last but not least, if you appreciate my content and want to support it, greatly appreciate it. One of the ways is supporting me directly through Patreon. Little as $1 a month. Helps me go out and create more content for you. And you get early access to videos as well as access to our Discord, where if you have questions, happy to answer them over there. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Life, I was a